everyone, and welcome once again to the sadistic and horrifying Comic Vault. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Steve Baxter.
How you doing, Steve?
Good. How are you doing, Cap?
Well, I'm good. We're here today in the sadistic and horrifying Comic Vault because we're going to be talking about Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, and I could not think of two better adjectives to describe this story. This is, of course, one of the big top 5 Batman stories that gets touted up as being the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I guess the first thing I want to ask you, Steve, is if it's warranted, if it's deserving of that. We should probably start there. First of all, this is what, 1989? Or is it before that?
I think it's 88.
88, okay.
I'm not positive, because I know he was working on this book as soon as he fell out of good graces with DC, and he was only done as a last-minute favor to Brian Ballin.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Yeah, because the whole history of the book is essentially that Moore and Ballin pitched a Batman Judge Dredd crossover. That didn't work out, so Alan Moore's like, okay, well, what else do you want to do? And Brian Ballin said, please let me do a Batman Joker story. So before Alan Moore decided to leave DC for good, because he didn't like working with their licensed characters, he wrote this story. So it's at the very tail end of this. I think he was actually wrapping up something else he wrote at the same time.
It's fascinating when that happens. Can you imagine the world without The Killing Joke?
Yeah, really. It's something you can't, even if people don't like it, or even if its reputation isn't warranted, it's impossible to remove it out of the history of the character. It's so ingrained now, and especially with side characters.
Yeah, especially with side characters. This informs Gordon really hard. Obviously, it informs Barbara Gordon really hard. And I can't imagine some of my favorite Batman stories being what they are without this being in the history, not even canon necessarily. Because, of course, and we'll have to talk about this, there's stuff that happens in this that's difficult to consider part of the main Batman canon because it does seem to be a story that's set apart, but then there are events that are taken out of this and made canon, and are obviously primarily the big one being Oracle and Batgirl losing her legs. We wouldn't have No Man's Land the way it is without, we wouldn't have my favorite story the way it is without this.
Yeah, you wouldn't have, we wouldn't have the period of the 90s, because recently I was on Twitter, I was talking about the best decade for Batman. And someone brought up the 90s because that's the point where we had the Bat family fully realized. We had Oracle, we had Batgirl, we had Robin, and we had Nightwing working with Batman. And you wouldn't have any of that without Killing Joke first giving us a reason for why the side characters needed more explanation, starting with Barbara Gordon. Yeah. To give her a new identity, just extended to what Chuck Dixon was doing, and giving all the other side characters a new identity.
And of course, was this not? The Bat family was getting just shot and killed and maimed and paralyzed all over the place in the late 80s, right? Was this not also right around Death of the Family, which we've also reviewed on the show? Was that not? What was that? 86, 87? That was right around this time.
Yeah, I think Death in the Family takes place right after this.
Did I say death? Did I say death?
Take place afterwards.
Did I say death in the family? Did I get it right this time?
I think so.
Okay, good.
Although you said you reviewed it on the channel, I don't think we talked about Death in the Family. I know you and Dan talked about Death of the Family.
I thought you and I reviewed that story.
I don't think so, because I would remember making jokes about Ambassador Joker.
No, we did. I'm almost positive we did.
Oh, okay. I don't remember.
Okay. Well, we did Lonely Place to Die, and I thought when we did that, we decided let's go ahead and do Death in the Family. And,
I don't
okay, you know what? I don't usually do this. You keep talking, you say interesting things, and I'm going to look this up, because I'm almost positive we've done that story. It's going to crap me up when I'm right.
Because Death in the Family, right after Killing Joke came out, and the whole idea of kicking around, killing off Jason Todd has been going around this time, because Frank Miller did Dark Knight Returns in 86, and Jason Todd was already dead in that before he died in the comics. So you had the alternate universe where Batman quit because of Jason Todd, and then you had an in-canon story where Batgirl was shot and crippled, and you have a Batman that's almost ready to give up. And so Killing Joke reads as kind of like the withered Batman after Death in the Family.
Apparently we didn't.
Death in the Family taking place after actually really helps what the Killing Joke was supposed to, which is expand Batman outside of just being the loner.
Yeah. Apparently we didn't. I totally thought we did.
Okay, I thought so. Because that's a story that's not very good at all, aside from killing off Jason Todd. So.
Maybe I talked about it on Yearbook a long time ago or something. I have no idea. I know I read it at one point, again, after the longest time. It's not important. Anyway, moving right along. Okay, so thank you for that background, and I'm sure more background stuff will come up as we move on. Let's. First of all, can I say that this edition is beautiful and glorious, and if you've not read the story and you want to read the story, this is the way to get it. And Steve, tell them the big reason that this is the one to get.
Okay, so the original Killing Joke that you'd get in the 48-page version was colored by a guy named John Higgins, and he was one of the comic creators that came out with the British Invasion, and he worked with a lot of DC characters at the time. And Brian Bolland wasn't able to color the Killing Joke while he was working on it, so John Higgins did it. And for a lot of people, that was like the definitive way of looking at it, but Brian Bolland was always disappointed in the book. He never said it ranked high for him, and part of the reason for that was because he never got to see it colored. They never got to go through and make his vision for it. And the big reason he wanted to do this is because he wanted to draw the Joker. He wanted to draw and color the Joker. So for the 20th anniversary, he finally got a chance to color the pages. And because all of the originals were taken away and sold off to collections and such, he basically got a regular version of the book with all the color taken out, and then he just added his own through his Mac program, and he actually teaches people how to draw and edit and color on his website using computer programs, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
And he goes so far as to not just change the colors, but restructure faces, change things in the background, fix details. He calls this book like a game of what's missing. So every panel has, or at least every page has something different in this version, in 20th anniversary edition, than it did in the original comic.
Wow, that's really interesting. And a lot of the time we'll complain when things get changed retroactively like that, right? Where you get the obvious examples of Star Wars special editions, but things like that where we're trying to go back and improve on a thing that has been out and has affected history and is what it is and needs to be able to be looked at as a part of history. With a thing like this, I think it might be somewhat of an exception, partly because it didn't get made the way it was intended to be made. That's part of it, and also because you can still get the original. It's not like they've attempted to stamp that out. I mean, it probably doesn't get reprinted a lot, but I mean, like, that being the definitive one for the longest time, obviously there were a lot of it was printed a lot. I just feel like that's a thing you probably can go back to, but. If that's a thing that bothers anybody, that he went back and did that, it's a thing that I have a hard time getting annoyed about because this is the only version of it I've ever looked at, so I don't even know what the other one looks like.
Yeah, I agree. I had to retroactively go back and see what the original looks like, and I think DC is good enough that if you buy it digitally, the digital version has the original coloring.
Oh, interesting.
Every time people use it as panel reference, they're using the old version, not the recolors. And I think the most latest edition actually has, because the story is so short, it's only like 48, 46 pages.
Yeah, it is short.
So I think the latest version does actually print both of them.
Cool.
I'm not positive. So if you want the original or the new one, it doesn't matter. You can get them both very easily. And it's just a matter of like what you grew up with or what you prefer. Because the original coloring's not bad. It's colorful in a different way. And I still think this looks superior. I think this color is perfect for what the story was trying to do. The other version has more highlights in places. It emphasizes the color red a lot more than this version does, and it's important there as well.
Yeah.
But it's different, and the big reason it's different is that the black and white sequences in this, where the color red is emphasized, isn't as much of a wow factor if you see the whole book with the color red is emphasized.
That's a really good point. Because that lobster symbol.
Yeah. The lobster, the Red Hood double look and stuff like that. Details like that would just automatically look different if your eyes were kind of desensitized to seeing red all over the place.
Which is really interesting. See, now you got me wanting to go back and look at that other color because, I mean, there is a lot of red in the book besides, and so that makes, I can't imagine it being more pronounced.
It's weird.
Astounding.
It almost has this weird effect of, like, this book, everything fits in and blends together just right. In the other version, everything kind of pops, and it's almost like a weird pseudo 3D effect where you see the layers, you see the foreground, background, middle ground more than you see it here.
Is it because...
So I guess they're both good, but I still prefer this one.
Do you think that was because the pencils are just so detailed where we have almost like photorealistic faces that there was an attempt to make the color pop a lot because it felt like a really poppy kind of book already, where just things do kind of jump out at you. So was it maybe an overcompensation, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I guess that would make sense. Particularly when you get to like Joker on his throne of babies. I think something like that colored in a little bit more with more of like an emphasis on the distance and spatial references might even look a little bit better.
Oh, okay, interesting. Because I like the shadowiness of that. And I like that at first glance you don't immediately realize what those are, and then you look at them and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, my favorite part about that is that it's not a full page spread. It's a small panel within the context page.
And it looks like it
panel on the page,
could have
been. It's still only a panel, as opposed to being like a big blow up.
And it totally looks like it could have been. Well, why don't we talk for a minute? I think this is a nice segue about the way the story's told before we even really get too much into the nuances or into the big plot points and the nuances. One of the things I really like about this, and of course Watchmen has this too, and Alan Moore is always really great at this. And obviously Boland's art is amazing, but Alan Moore has a tendency to meticulously script out what he wants the panels to look like. So you do have to credit him to a very large degree for the cinematic nature of how the panels are laid out and how much like movie storyboards they look. And I'm sure Alan Moore would hate me for saying that because he doesn't like his things being adapted to movies, and he looks at comics as a form that is legitimate within itself. And of course I think that too, but they are supposed to be storyboards in the sense of it is a visual medium and you're telling stories the way a movie would, in that you're looking at actions people are taking and you don't have to spell everything out. And this book is wonderful for that. There are a lot of pages where I find myself having to slow down my eyes because I wanna shift over everything, and there's major important things that I'm being told about what's happening with the story with no words at all in a lot of panels, and sometimes on any pages. The way the story opens, very much like Watchmen, in the rain, and I find myself again wanting to kind of slow my eyes down and imagine the sounds and the smells along with what I'm looking at. And when you do that, it's a more effective read, and I think that's what you're supposed to do with a story like this.
Yeah, I agree. One of the most interesting things about this is Alan Moore, like you said, is meticulous about this, but he didn't decide to make like a completely original panel structure for it. He didn't bother controlling the pace by rearranging the panels in anything other than conventional. So if you want the book to read quickly, it will read quickly. If you want the book to read slowly, it will read slowly. The opening two pages where you just have like 9 panels for 2 pages straight. And if you want to, you can stop and glance at the signs on the secretary's desk. The fact that Harvey Dent is the first villain we see, instantly giving us the theme of duality. You don't have to observe all that, but it helps. And Alan Moore seems to have enough respect for the reader that he'll let them decide how much they want to linger, as opposed to like filling it up with words and forcing you to stay on a page, something like Frank Miller would do. Because Frank Miller thinks the biggest problem with comics are you can't control pace the same way you can do with a film. So the best thing you can do is slow them down with words or speed them up with the lack of words. And Moore doesn't worry about that as much.
Moore likes to give you some control.
Yeah, exactly.
I like what you said about details and how you can just skip over things that I did not think about Two-Face and that theme of duality. Thanks for pointing that out. It's exactly like with the Arkham games, right? Where you can just blow through a room, and if you stand there for a while and look around and look at things and take 80 to 100 hours to play the game, like I'm doing with Arkham Knight, you can it informs the story, and you learn a lot more.
There's jokes and stuff. Like you look at the secretary's desk, and it says you don't have to be crazy to work here, but it helps. And that's another big thing throughout the story. You see like signs of the circus and stuff that have got really twisted, sick Joker kind of jokes, and you don't have to read those, but you can.
And none of that stuff seems to be arbitrary or just this. So, I mean, like, you can skip them and you can still appreciate the story and you can still get the gist and even more than the gist and get the important stuff. But it was something like, we could analyze that sign, Steve. I mean, like
Yeah.
what Joker is trying to prove, and this is a Joker that has something to prove, which is one of the things I like about the story, is that everyone will, if given, the one bad day, if given the opportunity, will go crazy, and that it is not only inevitable, but it's natural. And so to start on just the second page, having that sign on that desk is really appropriate, because it speaks to that idea. And it's like, we're dealing with, she's working there, we're dealing with crazy people, and just give in. I mean, Joker's whole message is just give in.
Yeah, he's almost, and I never thought of this, but I feel like Joker is a more twisted Robert Frost, particularly in this book, because there's a weird nature motif that goes throughout this, and Moore has this in some of his other works, but you open immediately with the rain, and you see the leaves and such, and it immediately opens with, rain is not a systematic thing. It's complete chaos. It's just things
Great
falling
point.
everywhere and erupting. The leaves having no choice but to dance with the wind and not control it, like Robert Frost would say. And then the next thing we see is the very human, the very man-made, mechanical, organized structure, which is a car and the lights. And it's very apparent that the lights are artificial, the rain and the forest is not. And so you get this, that there is a logical structure to how the world works, but the logical structure is always underlined with things you can never control.
It's also
and
important.
One of my favorite things by the end of this is that it makes a good argument for the problem with logic in the first place, which is that logic is a system design that people accept, but at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of random things that you can twist around to mean anything.
Yeah.
And so Batman has to have a degree of insanity no matter what, because all he's doing is rearranging facts and premises to the conclusions that best suit him.
And and I didn't think we would get to this yet, but now that you said that, I'll say this. It's also important that much of where the Joker gets to, just like Batman, is simply a matter of choice. He chooses to look at the world the way he looks at it, to the point where he has forgotten his own background because he doesn't want to remember it. And so so logic and illogic in a bizarre way kind of work the same, because so Batman, as you said, has to rearrange things to look like order. Joker simply arranges things to look like chaos. It's a matter of choice. You look at the world the way you want to look at it. And I think it's also important that on that opening page when you're talking, we should just review this book page for page. That's what we should be doing. It's only 40. We could probably do that. Anyway, I think it's important. You mentioned I love that the man-made attempt at structure in the middle of the perceived chaos. It's also important that Batman's the one driving the car, because Batman represents in this story order versus Joker's chaos, unless they both represent chaos, or unless the Joker is. The ending is so ambiguous that you can look at it so many different ways, and we'll of course talk about this in a little bit. But you can look at this in so many different ways. Batman and the Joker are, as they've always been, sort of two sides of the same coin. But here, more than anything else I've ever read, they feel like kindred spirits, which is twisted and fascinating. They seem like, in a lot of ways, the same person, sort of like Daredevil and the Kingpin in the Netflix show, where they come from similar beginnings, kind of, and they end up making a choice that leads them to where they are. Although I think that if we can buy anything about the Joker's background in this, and it's difficult to tell how much of it you can really believe. If you can believe any of that, it is important that there are differences in their background, but I think by and large, they are simply two guys who chose a path. And when you get to the end of this, you can see it as someone who represents chaos, someone who represents order, and one of them has to win. Or you can see them as two guys who both kind of represent chaos and one who is in denial about it. Or you can see it as two guys who both represent order and one of them is in denial about it. I could see a read at the end of this and I don't know if this is how I would read it, Steve, but I could see a read that the Joker is doing all of this as a cry for help.
Yeah, It's tricky. It all comes down to how you read that ending and who kills who doesn't kill who. What's the point of that whole thing?
Yeah.
And it's a weird debate because I guess this is the best place to mention this.
Sure.
There is an intended factual ending to this. If you go back and you read the script, Alan Moore has it in the pages that Batman doesn't kill Joker. They're just content with the fact that they find that they realize, and they're both on the same terms of, yes, we're going to kill each other one day, but it's not this day. That was how it's meant to be, but it's drawn ambiguously. I'm not sure if Alan Moore wanted that or not, but Brian Bolland definitely does a good job of making sure that ambiguity plays into the story a little bit more, because his art is fantastic all the way through. He does just as much with the art as Alan Moore does with the words.
Yes.
So Alan Moore does have in the script that we zoom out to the puddle, but it's almost like he's telling himself how he's interpreting the ending before he's telling the reader, because he's putting it in the part of the script that no one's ever going to see. Unless you actually search out the script, you're not going to figure that out. But that's how it plays in his head. And
Weird.
Part of it's also that you would read that ending differently depending on how you think of Batman. If you're a newcomer, if you're an expert, if you're wondering about what comes before, what comes after, depending on what your view of Batman is and what the history is up to this point, this could be a very different character for different people.
Well, you made me think of like 3 or 5 different things, Steve. You were talking about the rain representing chaos at the beginning. I think it's important that it's bookended.
Yes.
That we have that rain at the end, and that kind of helps to add to that ambiguity, because Batman is there, and Batman and the Joker are both sort of there at in both places. Although the Joker's not there at the beginning, but you don't know that yet. When you get to the end and it is that ambiguous about it, I think the panel that makes a lot of people read it as Batman kills the Joker is what looks like a choke grab.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's blown up and could have been a full-page spread, but isn't.
Yeah, and if it was, we would, I think, almost certainly interpret it as Batman is killing the Joker there. I mean, there's just so many ways to read that last page. It's fascinating, you know? Like Batman, and I love it for that. I think it's, I don't think it is an irritating sort of ambiguity, because I feel like it's playing fair with the reader, in that it doesn't read like a thing that, where it's saying a thing, but I don't understand what it's saying because it's confusing. It's a thing that is allowing me to have an interpretation, and I think that it's very consistent because it is asking more questions than it's answering through the whole story about who these two people are and what exactly it is that they represent, by opening with this notion of Joker saying that he believes in. I mean, it's funny how much of Dark Knight came from this, and I never thought about that before. But this notion, and he doesn't say it the same way that Heath Ledger's Joker does. He doesn't talk about chaos so much as he talks about just allowing yourself to be crazy. But this idea that one of them is going to eventually have to win out, and that Joker thinks it's him because everyone is going to have that one bad day, and they're going to lose it. So opening this with this idea that Batman doesn't think that their relationship has to end that way, that one of them is going to have to die, and that he can rehabilitate the Joker, is fascinating, because both of them are in a way trying to rehabilitate each other. Joker thinks that Batman has already kind of gone over the edge and just wants him to admit it, and Batman thinks that Joker can be rehabilitated. If you can read that last page as Batman really believes what it is that he's saying, I don't know, but
yeah.
But
I think that you mentioned the edge thing.
Yeah.
Because the last joke plays a lot into it about helping your friend to jump across a building, and again, if you don't interpret the opening, the rainstorm, as a chaos thing, it depends on that entirely. As to
I never thought of that. So yeah.
But you get the last 3 panels, and it's Batman and Joker. You see their 2 feet, and there is a divided line between them, a very clear divide. Then the gray washes over it, and then the line's gone. Yep. And then it's back to chaos. And I'll go ahead and say that I always think of this as Batman kills the Joker. It's always been my read on it, is that we always kill the Joker in a story where we're examining Batman. This time, we kill the Joker in a story where Batman's used as a device to explain the Joker.
That's right.
And so it's fitting that the killing joke of this is that we finally get a moment of clarity and sanity the moment this guy dies. And so chaos with rain again wins out because Batman kind of gives in, and Batman becomes more of the Joker by the end, and Joker becomes more of the Batman by the end. The Joker is able to be rational, and Batman isn't.
Yeah, my problem is that I see so many different reads on it. I can't decide which one I want to gravitate toward. Because I saw that, and I see it more now with the rain motif. And obviously, this is all about, as I said, the Joker trying to make Batman give in to madness. One thing I find myself wondering is whether or not the Joker really expected Gordon to be completely affected and lose it, because he says that he's trying to prove a point. And does his point work if Gordon stays sane? Because of course Gordon does stay sane, and yet if you're right, and if that's how this ends, then the Joker still kind of wins because he gets Batman to cross that line. But can you call it madness just because Batman kills him? I don't really know. I mean, there's a lot of that. And then I was thinking about things like, as you said, the story is really important. The story, if you've not looked at this, that he said the joke at the end, that he and Batman are laughing at, that is of course not really funny, haha, but then they're laughing at it because of how it relates to their situation, and then you have to decide how exactly it relates to their situation, and it's kind of complicated. The idea of two guys in the dark, one guy's got a flashlight, and the other guy's not going to be able to make it because that first guy is going to turn off the light so that he falls to his death and dies, and you'll turn it off when I'm halfway across. What exactly does that mean about these two guys? Does it mean that madness wins out, or does it mean that sanity wins out? Because right before that, the Joker kind of pours his heart out to Batman and says, no, and I don't know if he's serious or not, but he looks like he's got like the one moment of lucidity we've ever seen him have after he turns into the Joker, when he says, I'm sorry, it's too late for that. Batman says you can be rehabilitated, and I will help you. And it's Batman saying, I don't have to kill you if you will allow me to help you. It's Batman saying, if you'll give in to my side, then it's like Mulder to Scully. It's like if you'll give in to my side, then this doesn't have to end that way. One possible read, and this was the first thing I thought of the first time I read it, was they've gone too far, and even if Batman did try to rehabilitate the Joker, he wouldn't trust it, and Batman's the one that turns the light off and ultimately doesn't let Joker go all the way to being rehabilitated. And so it has to end that way because neither one of them is going to let the other one ultimately really win out, because they're just too far gone. And so in that sense, it's like order wins, but then it doesn't, because Batman gives into madness by allowing it not to. It's a circle, and so anyway.
Yeah, it's brilliant on that level.
Yeah.
And the Joker has a really good speech in some of the 70s comics where he talks about how he's a guy that wants to rule through fear, the same way Batman does.
Yeah.
And the idea that the Joker, if he's the guy that needs the light path to walk across, the idea that the Joker is afraid that he can't trust Batman is immediately interesting, because he's the guy that he can always depend on. Steve Englehart has a really good run where he says that Joker says the reason Batman can always survive all of these death traps is because I am the ultimate irrationalist, and the only way to combat that is with the ultimate rationalist. That's why I can trust him to always win. But the moment Joker can convince him even slightly of being on his side, that trust breaks down, because Batman has to maintain that rationality in order to survive being with the Joker, and it must be the same way the other way around. The only way the Joker can constantly get away and fight Batman is if he's completely on the other side of it. And so if either one of those characters have a moment of clarity where they trust each other even the slightest, it has to end with one dying and not the other. And so they're both kind of afraid of that.
I'm almost more inclined to read the ending, and not just because you said this is what Moore intended, but after we've discussed this and you talked about the chaos thing, with the rain, that even though you read it as Batman kills the Joker, I'm almost more inclined after you brought up that symbol, that motif, to think that it's got to be the opposite, because what is more chaotic than Batman allowing the Joker to live after all of this happens? I mean, like, because it just depends on how you define chaos and how you define morality with Batman killing the Joker. Because clearly we're not in the middle. If we just take this in a practical, real sense, Steve, we're not in a situation where it's self-defense or where he's stopping anyone from getting killed or anything. Everything has happened already. So if Batman kills the Joker in cold blood, it is fair to read that as sort of madness. On the other hand, Batman leaving him alive, and remember that this is before we've had nearly as many stories as we have now, all about should Batman kill or not kill the Joker, and I feel like a lot of that stems from this, and so
this is Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, so when you, which of course were published really close to the same time, so when you get to that and you have the symbol that chaos is still reigning, is the chaos not kind of symbolized by the notion of Batman and the Joker both continuing when we can't decide which one exactly represents what, and Batman feeling like, and this is somewhat my projecting this from other things I've read, but I feel like that is kind of here, Batman feeling like, or like why does he want so badly to be able to save the Joker? Why is that so important to him? Is it because of his greater morality, or is it more because of what the Joker represents to them and to him? And as we've always talked to that classic thing of you need opposites to define each other, and so Batman, you could read this as, Batman's as chaotic as the Joker at the end. He lets him survive, and it's just, how do you want to define chaos?
Yeah. I mean, this is something that writers can play with all over the place after this. Morrison gives Batman a diagnosis that he's got apophenia, and that it's insane to think that every little thing leads to a necessary conclusion. And so just the idea of having order in the first place is chaotic. Or the idea, because the Joker, that's what the Joker says, that how could you live in this world and not become insane? It's insane to be rational in an insane world.
Which just breaks my brain.
Like that.
Like, I just can't even deal. Like, I can't even deal with that. It just breaks my brain.
Yeah, I mean, it just loops like that. And I mean, again, it goes back to like classic problems of logic. Stan Lee was doing this back. At least I think it was Stan Lee. I'm not sure who wrote the original Ultron stuff, but even back in the original Ultron comics, the whole idea was you create a machine that's entirely logical to prove why logic doesn't actually make any sense. That the whole nature of logic just depends on who programs what premises, and the definition of a premise is something that can't be proven in the first place. So you always have to rest it on blind faith somewhere. And for the Joker, that instability is the chaos, and for Batman, that instability could kind of go back to like the kind of deontological, there is a natural right to live, and all the premises are founding off of that. So is the chaos the natural thing, or is the good, the will, the way Kant would define it, the natural thing? And Kant was a big guy that believed in order as opposed to chaos. So very easily you could take either one as like a natural substance that the other was latching onto.
Yeah, one of the things that I love so much about the story is that the Joker's philosophy is strangely appealing. Yeah, in a really, really twisted way. It's not. I don't mean that I read this book and suddenly I agree with the Joker, of course. But he's strangely sympathetic. Like, I see how he got to where he is, to a degree. As much as we're keeping his background somewhat, cryptic, and we should talk about that. I mean, we should certainly talk about the comparison and contrast between their backgrounds, because I think the way each of them comes to order versus chaos is really interesting. I like that Joker says, "Batman, you must have had that one bad day too. Why would you dress up like a bat?" And this idea of, we always talk about this idea that Batman might be as insane as the criminals that he fights. This idea that the Joker is trying trying to prove to Batman that he's already crazy. And that's why I have a tough time with the ending and how to interpret it, because I don't know that it's so much that he's trying to make Batman cross a line as it is that he wants to prove to him that he already has and that they're the same.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Because another way to interpret it is that Joker's proving point isn't Gordon. That Gordon's is just a means to the end, and the real person to prove the point is Batman. And depending, he's giving the one bad day to Batman as opposed to he's giving it to Gordon. He couldn't care less whether or not Gordon goes insane. But again, that really leads up to interpretation as to whether or not this Joker or this version of Batman have ever really hashed it out like this before. Because part of the reason I want this to be after Death of the Family as opposed to before is because I can see a Batman that has just lost a Robin to the Joker being withered enough to go and discuss it with him. And the Joker that did something as bad as killing Batman's other half in cold blood might also be a little bit withered and reminded of the child he didn't have.
I also don't think, however, that you necessarily have to have an impetus for that. I like that we see the Joker before he becomes the Joker as such a younger man, and that there's discussion with Barbara Gordon about how when I was a kid, this stuff was still happening, and Batman and the Joker were just what they are now. And I like the idea that you open the story with Batman picking a moment somewhat arbitrarily. I think it's okay where he says, I'm just sick of the loop. I'm just tired of constantly going through the motions and going through the formula. I also like because Alan Moore is always discussing the medium and discussing the commercial nature of it in these, especially when he's talking about superheroes that he maybe doesn't even want to write in the first place. And what he's doing with that here, I think it's subtle, and I don't think it's the most important thing, but there's a little bit of the commercial nature of these stories encroaching upon the world and creating the world the way it is. That obviously the real world reason that Batman and the Joker fight and one never truly beats the other one, and the Joker always breaks out of prison, is because we want to tell a lot of these stories. But wouldn't it be interesting if you made them real people and you had them think about that, and they remembered all those times they've done that, going as far as to having like Silver Age versions of them in photos everywhere. I really like that. I also like, side note, all of the different pictures of the Joker from different interpretations going all the way back to perhaps somewhat symbolize how inconsistent that he is as a character and how difficult he is to pin down in seeing all those different versions of the faces. But that was the thing that I thought about, that it's not so much about. So I'm just saying, I resist the idea that I need this within a context, because I think the context is it's comic books and these guys fight over and over again. And what if this either was the last time or it was the proof that there never will be one? And it's up to you to decide that.
Yeah, that's a fair way to look at it as well. And speaking to the different versions of the Joker stuff that you mentioned. In the 70s, I think it's the late 70s, Dennis O'Neil has that story, Joker's Five-Way Revenge, which is kind of the quintessential taking Joker from the Silver Age to the Bronze Age, and giving the personality of the Silver Age Joker to the Golden Age Joker, who is just a maniac that murders.
Yeah.
And so the idea that the Joker that we ran with for the 70s all the way up to now, before Morrison got his hands on it, is a guy that's completely twisted and hilarious, but also a mass murderer and terrifying.
Yeah.
And this and Laughing Fish, I think, are the two quintessential Bronze Age Joker stories that deal with what became of the Joker after Five Ways Revenge. That's the transformation story, and this is the example of what that transformation did as opposed to what was happening before. And then you get it again when Morrison transforms him in 663, and the next quintessential stories would probably be what Snyder does and Batman R.I.P.
Speaking of Snyder, and I hate to backtrack, but there was a point I wanted to make, or somewhat of a joke, really, but it shouldn't kill. It shouldn't be a killing joke. I don't think this joke will kill anyone. But I was going to say that you were talking about how Moore's interpretation of his own work is in his script, but not in his story. Had Snyder written that last page, it would have been filled with narration boxes.
Probably so, yeah. There would have been at least one more page with someone in the hospital explaining everything to you.
he would be interpreting his own work for you and telling you what he's taking from. Not that there's not some stuff left up to interpretation with some of Snyder, but we recently reviewed Endgame, which is fascinating to read this right after Endgame, I think.
Yeah.
And the big thing I resisted with that story, as I said in that video, was that you get to the end and he is kind of somewhat giving you an analysis of his own work, kind of, and I was trying to decide if that was exactly what was going on. I love that I am just as confused about this ending, but for the exact opposite reason.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Snyder, though, because that brings me to the other point of, I think, because the difference between Snyder and Moore when they're writing Batman is, Snyder is really passionate about it. Snyder tells really personal stories, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But he very vehemently wants this thing to be good, and Batman means something to him. Alan Moore is the opposite. Alan Moore constantly talks about how The Killing Joke is just a Batman Joker story. It doesn't mean anything. These characters don't symbolize anything, and he couldn't care less about the story itself.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And the weird thing about it is, you can, if you read like a lot of Moore's work, like you read From Hell, you read V for Vendetta, you read Watchmen, and there is a little bit of a lack of thoroughness in this. Like, this is still a dense book, but it's nowhere near as dense, I think, as Watchmen or V for Vendetta. This feels like Alan Moore not phoning it in, but more so doing something for his friend before he's telling a definitive story for himself. Like, he I can't even tell if he's writing a good story, but he just wants to be pompous about it, so he acts like it's not good, or if he legitimately thinks that this story was not that good. And even Brian Bolland says it's not that good, which is really strange.
That is strange. What's fascinating to me about that is that if he's being real, and that's really what he thinks, it just speaks to how good of a writer he is.
Yeah.
And how great he was then. Because whether you love the story or not, we just spent 15, 20 minutes dissecting that ending and loving the fact that we couldn't come down on it. And it's amazing when you have a thing that ambiguous and you're not frustrated as much as you were fascinated and intrigued and enjoying trying to figure that out. So like if it is a thing where he wasn't passionate about the story and he just sat down and wrote a story real quick, if this is a thing he wrote in an afternoon, I mean, like,
yeah, no,
right, like, yeah.
It's better than anything I could spend years working on.
And you don't even like it that much compared to a lot of other things. I mean, I like, or at least you've told me before this is not one of your favorite Batman stories.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I'm gonna, when Batman Day rolls around in September, I'm gonna make my top 10 list, and Killing Joke's not gonna be on it. Honestly, it's a really good story. Killing Joke's not gonna be on it though. But I still really wanna. I wish I could even talk to Alan Moore. He's just not a very approachable guy, but I wish I could talk to Alan Moore and just get an honest, straight answer out of it. What went through your mind when you wrote this?
Yeah.
Because there's too much of making explicit what was implicit in comics before you.
That's right.
But there's also a lot of, I see you take this chaos theme much deeper in V for Vendetta. Why didn't you go deeper here? Why is it only 46 pages? Because I feel like he could do more with this.
I think what I like about it is that he didn't. I think I like the simplicity of it. I like that it's... Because Moore, my biggest problem with him in a lot of things is that he's overwritten. That when he gets passionate, he seems afraid that I'm not going to get the point, and he repeats himself a lot. That is my one big criticism of Watchmen, is I could take out like 30 to 40% of that dialogue, and it's the same story. And this doesn't have that. I love how streamlined it is, and how dense, idea-wise, it is, regardless of that. So I feel like if he did his normal kind of structure with this, it would be too much. It would probably be overdone, because it's not a complicated story. I don't think it has to be.
That's fair. I mean, that's also why I think this is great for adaptation, because in 75 minutes, you could potentially add a little bit of more focus to the smaller things and make it even a little bit better. I can't wait to see what that's like.
I am very excited about it too. And at first I resisted it a little bit, just because there's certain things in this that I didn't want to have to see on screen. Like
it's kind of disturbing.
It is very disturbing, and I didn't. And with a lot of those DC direct-to-video movies, to be more adult and try to make them appeal to that crowd and seem more validated, there's been a lot of throwing disturbing imagery in for no reason other than to validate it for adults. So I resist a little bit doing this because the folks making those seem to kind of eat that stuff out with a spoon, but to make a thing where it's warranted and it has a reason for being there, maybe that they should be adapting those sorts of course, because I'm probably not going to see the Killing Joke movie and go, well, that was adult for no reason. Kids could have seen this movie. No, not Killing Joke. You're absolutely right. It's a 40-something page story, and it's going to be probably a 75 to 80-minute movie. That's exactly the sort of thing that they should be adapting, and it's also going to be really interesting to see what they do with the art style.
And also the dialogue, because if I was them, I would lift pretty much all the dialogue and just focus differently on the camera, linger in certain places a little bit more. Yeah. But this story has no cursing. No one ever curses at all. There's a little bit of blood. There's some disturbing imagery, but the ideas take precedent with the maturity. Batman never has to express himself vulgarly, and that franchise, that whole DC animated structure, is really bad about just randomly throwing in unnecessary language just because they want to get that rating.
It wouldn't fit here because Batman is so collected in this story. Exactly. Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about it, is that one of the things that makes it more unnerving than even if it did, I think majorly, than if this story had tried to be more perverse and looked like Watchmen, had a lot of swearing in it, had like a straight up rape scene, as opposed to a somewhat implied one maybe, and because folks have said that maybe the Barbara Gordon thing is like an implied rape scene, and I don't think it necessarily is, but I'm just saying that
it's at least a sexual abuse scene.
It definitely is, yeah. Well, I would say that stripping her and then taking the pictures is certainly a sexual abuse thing, definitely. But if he'd gone full tilt like he did with Watchmen, he would have shown a lot of things that you wouldn't want to see in a Batman story. And so what I think, and I'm not saying that you can't make a really, really adult Batman story necessarily, but what I like about this and what makes it more unnerving is that it reads like a regular Batman story that anybody could pull off a shelf, and then it does that stuff. And it does it like Dennis O'Neil or somebody would have had he put stuff like that in there. Like it reads like if Alan Moore was writing a Denny O'Neil Batman story to me.
And then some of the harder stuff is pulled back. Like the original Brian Ballard art is a lot less censored with Barbara Gordon. And they changed that. I'm not sure what the actual reason for that was.
Now, did they change that? I'm sorry. Let me ask you this: did they change that just for this version? Is it in the old?
No, that was always how it was printed.
It was always printed that way.
It was just discovered a few years ago.
Because I saw that you sent me pictures of it online, and I couldn't even believe it existed.
Yeah.
I'm not going to show that in this video, but I was very surprised. But I was very surprised that existed.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising. But the other thing is that Moore thinks that he should have been reined in more with this story.
Oh, interesting.
Which is weird. And the big thing is with Barbara Gordon, because the editor for this book was Len Wein, and he's a really good Batman writer. He did some good stuff in the 70s and 80s. He had a really great run with the third Clayface. And Moore asked, "Can I cripple Barbara Gordon?" And Len Wein famously says, "Yeah, okay, cripple the Bee."
Weird.
Just verbatim. And Moore to this day says, I shouldn't have done that, and Len Wein should have stopped me. And that's a little surprising, especially because that guy is usually not that crude about things, at least from what I've read.
Yeah.
But
I don't know why he would say that.
That's how Len Wein came to that decision. And so we have this entire, almost 20-year decade where Oracle is a thing, just because Len Wein didn't think about that more.
Well, I mean, I'm of two minds about it. Just that attitude is strange, but yes. Also, she became such a more fascinating character after that. I mean, like at the time, I could see why you might say, "Oh, maybe we shouldn't do that to her." And here's what I like about it. Joker makes her a victim, but then she doesn't allow herself to be a victim. I could see someone reading this story, especially now, especially with different sensibilities that a lot of us have now. That folks might look at this and say, why would you do that to this really strong female character? But I think even in the story, she is a very strong person. She could very easily have lost it even even before Gordon. You know what I mean? That he could have proven his point with her. The Joker could have, and she's very quick dealing after this incredibly traumatic thing to talk to Batman the way she always has, and that's something that I really admired about more the way he writes her in this. But then after that, when in regular comics we allow her to stay crippled, she does not allow herself to be a victim, and she finds a way to continue on. So ultimately, I think it's one of the best movies he made in the book. I'm very glad it happened. I think that she is if the question, if it's a gender question, if it's you shouldn't have done that to her because she's a strong female character. I think it made her stronger, and I think it made her one of the best female role models in comics.
Yeah, I agree. The ultimate consequences of it is, because I like Barbara Gordon better as Oracle than I ever will as Batgirl.
Yeah.
I think she's so much more important to the history of comics as Oracle, and no matter how good the Gail Simone stuff or the new run is, I want her back as Oracle. Because I know a lot of people in wheelchairs and such, and they really look up to Barbara Gordon.
Yeah, she's really important for folks that have had spinal injuries or were born without the use of their legs. That kind of just as much as Daredevil is important to blind folks.
Yeah, exactly. She is an invaluable character because of this story. At the same time, the attitude under which she was so arbitrarily crippled is kind of disturbing. You could just walk into an edit room, and because you need a token female character to get injured, that it could just happen like that. I could see people having a problem with that. Because this is a little bit of a problem, that Len Wein could just easily just ride her away like that. There was no bat meeting about it. There was no decision-making process. It's it doesn't matter. She's Batgirl.
And you're saying that because she's Batgirl, because you could make the flip argument of, well, but how often do editors tie people's hands behind their backs and won't let them tell stories they want to tell? Isn't it cool that he would allow something like that? But you're right, the circumstances are strange.
Yeah, and again, I do like her better as Oracle, so I'm not against crippling Barbara Gordon in the story. It's just, again, how simple it was. It's weird to walk into those editing offices, and you could never get away with that now, ever. Yeah. That you could just take a lead character like that, a Bat Family character, and just arbitrarily cripple them without so much as, let's ask some higher-ups at DC. Because Len Wein wasn't even the Bat editor. He was just the editor for this book.
Yeah, good point. You'd think that somebody in the Bat office, well, now hang on, it's Batgirl, let's talk about this. Okay, so I think it's really neat that this book is as short as it is, and that I feel as though we have almost barely scratched the surface of a lot of story stuff, and we've already been talking about this for 40-something minutes or more. We need to talk about the Joker's backstory, because I can't decide exactly how to read it. I think it is fascinating. I think it's a really good backstory for the Joker. I also don't know how much of, or if any of it, I can take as anything other than, at the very least, unreliable. The big thing that I'm unsure of is and this seemed minor the first time I read it, and then the second time I was stuck on this page and I almost couldn't get past it because I don't understand it. You get to the end of that first big exchange that he has with his wife. This is when the Joker, who I don't believe is ever named, is he given a first name?
Yeah.
He's talking to his wife, and he is, again, if you've not read this, quick summary, he is a failed stand-up comic. He's trying to be a stand-up comic. He's quit his good job in order to try to live out his dream, and he's failing at it, and he can't feed his family. His wife is going to deliver in 3 months, and they don't think that they can feed the baby. He's incredibly insecure about all of this, and takes every look his wife gives him personally, and takes a lot of stuff out on her because he is wrought with guilt for what he feels he's done to his family. And when you get to the end of the scene, she all of a sudden has this bizarre exchange where she says that everything's gonna be okay. He's funny and he's good in the sack, and all of a sudden she has this giant creepy smile on her face, almost like she was on Joker Talks or something. Turns into an entirely different person, and I don't know how to read that. I don't know if if he has already driven her insane. If that is supposed to be the case, I think that it is melodramatic and unbelievable. But I also don't know if what I'm looking at, Steve, and because it's in black and white with splashes of color, I feel like it has to be this. I don't know if it is confused and surreal memories, or if it is supposed to be what happened, because there's clues that tell us that the Joker is kind of remembering stuff. He looks in the glass after that scene, and his face is suddenly drawn a lot more like with his long face and his frown. He looks like he did back then, but with makeup. But then he tells Batman later that he doesn't remember anything about his past, and that he chooses not to remember. And he says that memories are crippling, and that, I love this, they get in the way of the delusions, and that being insane is all about not remembering things, not learning from your mistakes, and isn't that wonderfully freeing, because you're not responsible for anything, and that's how everyone should live, and that's natural. Is just don't allow yourself to be responsible for anything. Don't remember anything that happened in the past. So what happens to him in the past? Is it real, or isn't it? What do you think, Steve?
It's really tough. I always prefer my Joker not to have a backstory, but reading this book the last time around, I love the balance you brought up, because I was going to bring it up eventually anyway.
Yeah.
The one with when you see the Joker in the flashback and you see him in the present, and he's drawn almost exactly like, and it's both a reflection. That's really, really haunting. It's one of the most standout panels I've seen in this whole book, and part of it is that he remembers his wife when he looks at the cloud, I think, because he's got that laughing box right in front of him, and he's reaching out to take its hand almost the same way he did with his wife. And I wonder if a lot of it is, I think, just delusion. But you get certain moments here that are almost like too sincere.
That's what.
You get to the very end of it, and Batman, or when Joker says it's too late for him, and he's almost drawn exactly like he is in the flashbacks. Like he's kind of succumbed to who he used to be. There are other interpretations where you could say that he was insane before this, and that's why he's so manic in that scene. That he
I resist that, though, because I didn't see that as all that manic. He could have gone too far and made him abusive and stuff. What it is instead is it just comes from a place of rampant insecurity, and he's desperate and terrified. The fact that he breaks down and apologizes to his wife for the way he's treating her, and for just how difficult trying to make it as a stand-up comic is being. And by the way, I love how dramatic and depressing and horrible that is, with that being the thing he's trying to do. I love that. I also love the twistedness and the perversity of Batman. Well, we'll have to talk about this too. The fact that the way Batman creates him is really interesting. More interesting than I think it is in some other places. But that he becomes the Joker, and he's instantly funny. Just he sees the world as. He's instantly funny. Isn't it interesting that he can't make it as a stand-up comic because he's scared? It's all because of fear. He can't find any humor in anything. So how's he going to make it as a stand-up comic? And then he sees the light side when he goes insane, and he says a bunch of stuff as the Joker in the present that is legitimately funny out of context. In the context, a lot of it terrifying and frightening and haunting, or at the very least clever, Steve. When he shoots Barbara Gordon, and he has the line about there being a hole in the jacket, and that the book has a damaged spine, and that it's not going to walk off the shelf, and all of that. I mean, this guy is legitimately clever, and that makes Alan Moore also clever and a disturbed person for writing this the way he did. But isn't
he was the guy that made dead booby jokes in high school, isn't he?
But I think that's really interesting. That he is more like brutish and sees the world as a dark place where he can't trust anyone before he becomes the Joker. He's more like Batman than he is. He's more like Batman than the Joker before he becomes the Joker. There's so many cool ways to read. So there's a part of me, Steve, that really wants the flashbacks, at least for the sake of this story, which stands alone, and I don't think you need anything else around. I don't think it matters if it's part of continuity. That wants at least some of the Joker's backstory to be the Joker's, especially when you connect it to, and I hear you about not really wanting to know, but for the sake of this, it's the most fascinating thing is comparing it to the way Batman becomes Batman. Both of these guys' bad days, because one of them comes to the extreme persona that he gets to with Batman because of indecision, and one of them comes there because of a bad decision, and how that affects their worldviews later on is really interesting. The Joker chooses to look at the world this way, and Batman does as well, but Batman kind of sees it as he didn't have a choice, and the Joker also sees it as he didn't have a choice because he thinks that everyone eventually turns out this way. And so, I don't know, like, there's just, it is so frustrating to have all these really interesting connections and in comparison contrast to these guys' backstories, and I don't know if this is supposed to actually be the Joker's backstory.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. Because there is, like you said, a part of me that wants this origin. Because again, it's just some of those panels, just some of those comparisons where you see this version of the Joker and you see what he used to be, and it's legitimately terrifying and it's legitimately emotional because he's still a person. He's an idea. We talk about him as such, but he is still a human being, and it's very hard to kind of remove that the moment you introduce it. And I think one of my favorite parts is when we get to the way his wife dies. And it's that 1 in a million shot bottle heater just blows up on her.
I don't think that's how it happened, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's how it happened either, because, again, unreliable narrative.
That's not what I mean. The way I read it, even in the context of the story, is that he either buys into it or is too in grief to care. I think that for whatever reason, the Red Hood gang did that on purpose. I think they killed her.
Maybe. See, I don't know why they would do that, though, because the whole reason that he's working with them is because of his wife, so it would kind of be counterintuitive, because they'd have to convince him more if they killed his wife.
I thought the very same thing, but I saw it as like a kind of, maybe it's supposed to be like a liability thing. Because when they reveal that she's dead, it's just weird because they point out the cops. Right, like they're in that room with those cops, and when they say, like, those cops seem really dodgy to me, and when they point them out, they're real quick to say, have you know where does she think you are, and where you're gonna be tonight, and he says the alibi, and they say, oh, that's really good, and I saw it as maybe they don't trust him to not tell his wife what's going on, so they went ahead and offed her because he doesn't have, because the thing is, his family is the reason that he's going through with all this, but he also has nothing to lose after she's murdered, and now he's got nothing, and it's really easy to force him into it. So maybe it would be easier to make him go through with it than if she was still around, because when he's got something to lose, if things get too hot in the moment, he might try to duck out.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess that makes a lot more sense. I just kind of like the idea that the Joker's wife would die in such a bizarre way.
That's because it speaks to the chaos. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, like it's the randomness of it all, right? Like, because Bruce Wayne's parents, at least post Crisis, it's a random killer. We don't know who it is. It's just a guy with a gun, and so. If people are unreliable, the things people create are unreliable. The machine is another instance of technology. It's another instance of order and logic. And that breaks down just as much as any random person.
Okay, but here's why I like my read better. Because that's how he would see it. That it's just random chaos and that he's the victim. But I like the idea that with Bruce Wayne, he really is kind of a victim, still blames himself because of a random choice he makes that he could not possibly know would have led to his parents' death. Still blames himself, but then with the Joker, he blames the universe And what if all of it was his fault? You see what I'm saying? What if?
I see what you're saying.
What if he thinks that was random, and he he blames the Red Hood gang for getting him there, and he blames Batman for dropping him in the vat of acid. And remember, he looks at Batman and sees him as the devil in hell. And then he becomes that later for other people. That's one of the things I love about this book, by the way. That the Joker and Batman are both in different places. The devil, but what if that bottle heater thing? It doesn't make any sense that she would even be trying on a bottle heater 3 months before her baby was born. What if that sounded like a stupid excuse to me, like somebody just made a thing up. And what if he bought into it and he thinks it's chaos? And so both Batman and Joker's worldviews are true to some degree, that there is both order and chaos, and you have to find the middle, and neither one of them is willing to do that. And so the Joker sees himself as a victim all the time, and Batman refuses to allow himself to feel victimized, but he really was one at one time, and he's got to have control of the time, and because Joker thought he was a victim, he's got to find chaos, and ultimately his becoming the Joker was not because of one bad day, it was because of one poor choice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then you can even extrapolate that a little bit further, because Batman's whole worldview, the moment he becomes Batman, the moment you start dishing out moral justice, you assume people have a choice. So he starts from a place where he has none, and then imposes on people that you
always do
make decisions.
Yeah.
And then the Joker starts from a place where he made a choice, and then imposes on people, no, the world is just this way, and you can choose to give in, or it can break you. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I like going back to Two-Face, because Two-Face relegates everything to fate. You get not only the dualism, but you also get the arbitrary coin flip. You get you have to choose to flip the coin, but whatever the coin says necessarily coming true, is that fate or is that just the order you give it?
Yeah, and then the fact that you can't ultimately come down one way or another is absolutely maddening. Who's right?
Yeah, exactly. Like you said before, the fact that so much of this is interpreted, but so much of it still works. Like there's 100 different ways to read the story, and all of them are valid.
Yeah, isn't that great?
You don't have to extrapolate to get to anything, really.
No, it's all there. I mean, we're both finding plenty of proof to back completely opposing reads.
Yeah, of course. And again, the classic argument of did Batman kill the Joker or not, that's a debate that's been going on, and it still hasn't stopped.
No.
You can find proof, and you still can't really come to a decision. Brian Bolland and Alan Moore can come tell you to your face that this is what they wanted, and you still won't necessarily buy it.
It doesn't matter. The thing takes on, and that's what I love about great story. It takes on a life of its own. This is its own mouthpiece. I mean, like this is a thing that speaks for itself, and it doesn't matter what was intended now. It's up to you and I to decide for ourselves. And I also like that you and I are not having to bring too much Bat knowledge to this, right? Like this is a thing that anybody. I think in a lot of ways, if you're okay with sort of disturbing things, this is not a terrible thing to read if you've never read a Batman story. With the exception of the fact that it is a thing that is sort of breaking these characters down, and it's like, as I said, it's somewhat about the medium, and it's somewhat about what they represent. But a lot of great stories are about who characters are and what they represent. And as long as that representation and that kind of metaphorical stuff doesn't trump real characterization, then you can look at it as a layered thing. And these are both fascinating people, just within the context of this story, where they're not just symbols. So it's a story that is very readable. I gotta ask you this question. Since we've spent this long on this and been talking about it, do you like this any more than you did before?
Yeah.
Good!
I mean, it's a great story. It's a fantastic story. It is one of the best written Batman stories. At the end of the day, though, I there are other Joker stories I like more.
That's totally fair. I know you don't like Alan Moore a lot because you very often don't agree with him, and I don't think this is inherently a really cynical heroes don't win story, but that's partially because I don't know how to read the ending.
Yeah, that's true. And again, I do read it as Batman killing the Joker, so I might feed into it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think part of it's also that, again, this, like I said before, this is a definitive story explaining a version of the Joker. It's not a Joker transformation story, and I tend to like the Joker transformation stories more. Like, I like Five Ways Revenge, I like 663, I like Endgame, and I like those stories because those are stories that give you a version of the Joker that evolves past everything you've seen, as opposed to just giving you another Joker story. And this is a really great Joker story, but it is, for all intents and purposes, just another Joker story.
Yeah, but what I like about it is that it's just as interesting as a transformative story because you get in the guy's head in a way that you don't in so many other stories. I mean, like he's somewhat humanized. You see where he's coming from. It's one of the reasons that I love the Heath Ledger version so much is that you see what he's talking about, and it's supposed to be a character that's completely mad and out of his gourd, and the fact that you could take a guy who isn't even consistent and says different things scene to scene, but has a point, is fascinating and also terrifying because he represents potentially the nature of the universe or the nature of human condition.
And the scariest thing of all being that maybe he's completely sane.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right about everything, and he's not crazy. This craziness is just an image. That he's the guy making the most logical case.
One of the things that's unsettling about the story is that you spend more time with the Joker than you do Batman, and you get in his head, and with the flashbacks and stuff, regardless of how much of that I'm supposed to really take as real, he's a real person, and you see where he comes from. And Batman is monosyllabic and doesn't say very much, and I mean, like, you know who he is because you've read other Batman stories, but he's sympathetic. He wants to rehabilitate the Joker. I mean, like, that sounds like an impossible task. He believes in order, and he thinks that everyone can be redeemed. A lot of versions of Batman do not believe that. It's really interesting, to have a Batman that or at least claims that he believes everyone can be redeemed. You could read it as he is lying to the Joker's face at the same time as Joker is lying to his face, but that's not how I saw it. So much he seems kind of as you said earlier, genuine about that. But we're distanced from him. I mean, he's the hero of the story, and we're very distanced from him. I think it's very fitting that Tim Burton has a quote at the beginning on the cover of this, and that this is his favorite Batman story, and that this is a Batman story where Batman is very distanced from the audience, and we don't know a lot about him.
It's also probably the only story Tim Burton's read with Batman.
Yeah, that's probably. I'd be very surprised if he didn't read Dark Knight.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah.
I think Sam Hamm probably read Dark Knight before Tim Burton.
I think Sam Hamm read a lot of stuff.
He wrote comics before that too.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. But I mean, like you get the sense reading that script, especially that he has a very intimate familiarity with those comics. His Joker reads when you look at it on the page. I've said this before, but when you look at it outside of the performance, because it's weird when I read that script, it reads differently than the way that it's interpreted by Jack Nicholson, and I don't know why that is. But like I found myself when I finally read some of that script, thinking about early '80s Batman comics, and it read like every early '80s Joker story I've ever read.
Yeah, no, that makes
voice.
sense. He's very much kind of what not only '80s but also '70s Batman writers were doing, where he's almost a little bit more of a gangster type character, but he's still got a bit of a gravitas. Jack Nicholson does a different thing with it. I still think it's just as good and does represent that really well, though.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I would, because I guess maybe this is a good way to segue in. Mark Hamill's going to do the Joker officially for the Killing Joke adaptation.
Really? Okay, how do you feel about it? Is this a good thing or not?
Yeah, I was going to ask, because a lot of people have brought this up, that he's been doing the voice forever, and so he's earned the right to do Killing Joke. I don't think that's the same thing as, is he a good person for this material? Because I don't see that performance. From this whole history of Batman, I don't see that guy delivering that final conversation well. I can't imagine that voice giving me a clear and sincere Joker by the end.
Here's my problem with it. I'm of two minds. First of all, the whole he's earned it thing, I can see why people would say that. That is taking this story and tallying it up as the greatest Joker story ever told. So if you believe that, if that's how you feel about the story, and you want like the perfect performance for this, and or if it's just you feel like somebody has to earn the right. Okay, if I can see that. I loved this. I don't necessarily have that. I say cast it on the merits of the actor. My problem with it on paper is just that I have already heard him deliver the lines from the the Oracle or the Barbara Gordon gets shot scene no fewer than twice at least. Maybe he's done it even more than that. He voiced it in the pilot of Birds of Prey when she gets shot there. He voiced it in Arkham Knight when we get to see Batman flash back to, or Batman's interpretation of it in his own mind. Or whatever that ends up being, because I haven't finished that game yet. So my deal with it is I'm gonna have a really hard time listening to that performance and not think of a lot of other Mark Hamill performances, probably. But he's such a good actor, and he's modulated that voice and done different subtle versions of his Joker for different kinds of things that I'm sure it will be wonderful. I don't... Has it been confirmed whether or not Kevin Conroy's doing it?
No. As of right now, Kevin Conroy just said that he would love to do it with Mark Hamill.
Because it would be...
we know Mark Hamilton. We don't know Conroy.
It would be bizarre to hear Mark Hamill opposite of any other Batman. I don't think it's ever happened. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. I don't think that's ever happened. And that would be strange. I also could see... I see your point that he might be strange for that final scene. I don't know. My hope is that he does a very different thing than he did for the Arkham games. And because the thing is, this is still an older Joker. He's not that old, but this is still a, Joker past his prime kind of story, right? I mean, this is Batman Joker. They've been doing this for years. So having an older, somewhat kind of grizzled voice sound, makes sense. But I wouldn't want it to be the same kind of demented. It needs to be kind of... This is a Joker that kind of fancies himself as sort of classy. He's not, but he sort of acts like that. We've got the top hat, we've got the cane, we've got that classic thing. I would... And by the way, that's how I always love my Joker, with the top hat and the cane. And the tails and all that. I have a tough time imagining the Arkham City Joker, that exact performance with this. So I hope he does something a little bit different with it. Kevin Conroy strikes me as the right Batman for most things. I feel like multiple interpretations of Batman are fine with that voice. So I see him even before I see Hamill, maybe. But I don't know. I guess I'm of multiple minds about it. That's fine, Steve. I mean, here's the thing. If it's the last thing he ever voices for the Joker, it's a wonderful way to go out. And I mean, we thought Arkham City was the last thing he was going to do. That was a wonderful way to go out. This is especially a wonderful way to go out. So,
and I think I want to underline that last point. A wonderful way to go out. I don't want Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, if they end up getting Killing Joke, I don't want them doing the voices ever again after that. It's not that they're bad. It's that they're getting too old and it's hurting their legacy. There are moments in Arkham City, Arkham Asylum, and Arkham Knight where their voices break and it just doesn't work. I still submit that Hamill and Conroy are good. Their voices do not sound natural out of those body types. And it's always bothered me. We've gotten used to it because we've had so many games, but it still bothers me. So if Killing Joke is the last thing and we get the perfect adaptation of that the way Dark Knight Returns was, then great. Make that their last thing, but sincerely retire them after that.
Yeah, I mean, retire them unless you ever do more Batman Beyond. That's the that's the only...
In that universe, I can see that.
And because Kevin Conroy can play a 80 or 90-year-old Bruce Wayne until he's 80 or 90. You see what I'm saying? So anyway.
I agree. I would love to see the age Joker in Batman Beyond again, but I don't know if we'll get more of that.
The more we talk about it, the more I'm very excited to see this adapted. And I just hope that it's adapted in that it's a movie. You know what I mean? In that it doesn't feel like it's a comic book put on screen, but that it's a movie, and it's because that was my big problem with year one, was that I was like, I just want to read the comic. It feels like it's too much of a direct translation, and that's the difficulty you can run into when you get to something that is so iconic and has a legacy like that. Dark Knight Returns did it right, where that was very faithful, but it was a movie. It wasn't exactly word for word, panel for panel, verbatim. And
the important thing that Killing Joke has over both Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One is there's no narration, there's no boxes, it's all dialogue.
Yeah, this thing should hinge hard on atmosphere, like like we should really, and we've got time, we've got space. We should really linger on some of those shots in the asylum and the rain and some of that atmospheric stuff in the inside the carnival, and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, this is a thing that can become a vastly different thing based on how it's directed, because there's so many different visual cues that could give you different interpretations of it. But I'm really excited. I can't wait to see what that eventually looks like.
Steve, this was not one of my favorite stories until you and I talked about it.
Interesting.
I am now in love with this in a way I never was before. This is a thing that people always tout up, as I said earlier, as one of the greatest things in the world. And you know what? I started with a question that we never quite answered, and that is it warranted? And now I'm going to say absolutely, it definitely is. The thing I don't like about it, of course, is that it eclipses other stories that folks should probably read that are wonderful. But that takes nothing away from the value of it as a piece. With something that can be this ambiguous, and I can have this many different reads on it and they all work, I can't help but call it anything less than a masterpiece. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. It's a brilliant story. It deserves all the praise it's gotten over the years. It may not be one of my favorites, but it's inarguable that if I was to review it in like a serious, scripted, on my own, give it a star rating format, it would be a 5 stars, no doubt. Out of 5.
We've been at this for a very long time. We went more than an hour because it's worth it, and I'm glad that we did that. Anything else that you didn't get to bring up that you want to make sure you did, Steve?
If it's okay, just like 2-3 loose things of just outside information.
Absolutely.
Partly the whole Joker origin thing, the whole Red Hood thing, that's all called back to like 1951 when we got Detective Comics 168 with the Red Hood. And Moore's really careful not to contradict anything in that issue with this, which is interesting that you didn't have to do that, but he did. The other thing is that Brian Bolland was asked to do a sequel to this. And there was initially going to be a story, and it was going to be done by Brian Azzarello.
Weird.
Yeah,
who's doing the Dark Knight Returns threequel?
Yeah, it's really strange.
Yeah.
But apparently, DC was so adamant about getting Brian Bolland back for it that when Bolland said no, the whole project just shut down. That it was artist or nothing. Which I guess I'm happy about. If you're gonna do anything as a sequel to this, you would have to involve the original team, unless you do what Jeff Johns and JMS did with their set around the Killing Joke stories, where Booster Gold has an issue where he goes back in time called No Joke, where he tries to prevent the shooting of Barbara Gordon, and he learns that it's something that's just not possible. And then JMS has a Brave and the Bold story where Zatanna and
it's like time travel in a lot of things. You just change it. The universe is
it's a fixed point in time. But the JMS has got a fantastic story where Zatanna and Wonder Woman take out Batgirl on her last night of the town before the Killing Joke, because they know they can't prevent it, but they want her to enjoy her last day.
That's sad.
Yeah, it was all really good. It's got a really great legacy. People reference it all the time. Morrison references it in his Batman and Robin. We talk about in Endgame how it's referenced all the time. It's a really important story. You can't do Batman through the 90s without it.
Man, there was something I wanted to mention. I can't deal with the idea of a sequel to this. I can't handle it. I just can't. I physically want to fold up when I hear the idea that this would have a sequel, because no matter what you do with it, you destroy that ending.
Yeah, you have to pick an interpretation.
I can't.
There's no way to do a sequel.
I can't deal with that, and when that becomes, a canonical or whatever, then you end up with reading this and you have an interpretation. And I mean, obviously you can go, well, this stands on its own, or you can just discount the sequel. But I mean, that becomes so complicated and awkward, and I'm so glad that never happened. And I wonder if that's not the reason that Bolland refused to do it ultimately. But then again, he and Moore both think they know how it ends, So
yeah, they think they know how it ends, and they just didn't like it. I met Brian Bolland at a con, and he signed a copy of it. And I got to ask him a question during a panel about this story, and I asked him, do you ever, is there ever a point where the Killing Joke eclipses things that you preferred over it, like you have Camelot 2000, all that stuff? Is there ever a point where Killing Joke is brought up too much in something when you try to craft out something for your own? And he says no, because he doesn't care about the story at all. That it doesn't matter to him. He personally asked Moore to do it, and he doesn't care about it at all. And that's really strange to me.
That is weird. So, well, that's got to be obnoxious for him then, because it's got to be the number one thing people bring up. It's only referenced.
People bring up the sign to him.
It's only referenced in every other Batman thing you see. We just played through it in Arkham Knight.
Yeah, there you go. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Wow. What? I don't know how he can say that.
I don't know either. He got to do the art his way. He recolored and everything, and he still doesn't like it.
I don't know. That's baffling. Oh my god, I so want to talk to him now.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to go in and talk to him now, because he's getting a little bit older and he can't do more art in long form because of his age, and it's too much of a challenge for him.
Yeah.
I wonder if that eventuality has kind of helped him rethink some of the stuff he's done, or maybe appreciates it more or less now. Because he is going to live on as one of the greatest Batman, or at least Joker artists ever because of this.
That's fascinating.
It's going to affect him at some point.
And I mean, obviously, we don't know all that goes into it, and I don't mean to be to be a jerk about it or anything. I'm baffled because I think it's so wonderful, and like there seems to be a lot of heart and soul in it. So it's really strange to hear someone say that. And also with more, I mean, like that he wasn't passionate about it when he wrote it, and I'm like, well then your grocery list must be the Bible. Right?
That's hilarious. There's, I guess we can end on this. There's interpretations of Nietzsche where his last book has like a shopping list and bring an umbrella on the side, and people actually argue that is the proper way to interpret that philosopher, is that reading what he writes on the margins is more important than what he writes on the page. So I wonder if more shopping list completely redefines what Watchmen and V for Vendetta and Killing Joke mean.
Really interesting, considering that he wrote his own interpretation in the script that you don't read.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not included in any of the editions.
No, that's why I was so surprised that you said that. I was like, well, I didn't get to read that.
Yeah, it's not packaged with anything. You have to actively search it out online, and it's easy to get a hold of online, but again, they don't reprint it.
I wouldn't have thought to go looking for it.
The original art or like layouts or behind-the-scenes stuff with the book.
I mean, like, there's other more things where you get to see some of his notes and chicken scratch and stuff, if memory serves. I mean, like, I think there's some notes in the margins and stuff in like I think Ultimate Watchmen or whatever that giant tome of Watchmen.
The big hardcover, almost like Absolute Edition.
The Absolute, yeah, Absolute Watchmen. I think that thing. I don't have that. I need to get that. But I've looked at it. The first time I read Watchmen, I read it that way because I borrowed it from a library like that, and it was glorious to get to read it that way. And it was also oversized. It's really nice to read Watchmen oversized because there's a lot of words on some of those pages, and it's really nice to be able to see it and be a big.
And of course, getting all those panels blown up must be a really fun experience.
Bifocal print. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Especially like a lot of those really iconic panels with like the comedian dropping and all that stuff. It's really nice to see that huge. I think it made more of an impression on me because of that. Anyway, I digress. Steve, thank you so much for doing this with me, and for your insights, and for the history, and I'm also excited because I think I helped you like this book more.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. I'm really glad that we got to do Killing Joke, because that's one of those books that's really important that people don't want to tackle. What could you possibly say that people haven't already said? And we spent a really long time on it.
Well, we probably said all kinds of things that people have said before, but I enjoyed it, and I hope other folks did too. Everybody, thanks always for watching. We sure appreciate it. And Steve and I are going to be back next week. We haven't decided with what yet, but we're going to do one more comic book story before we get back to Bat Chat proper, talking about Batman the Animated Series, and we're going to get on to Volume 2. With that very shortly. We're very excited for more commentaries. We're going to dissect the crap out of Bruce Timm Batman. Oh boy, has that been fun to do with you, Steve. I've really been enjoying it. And but we're gonna do one more story for you folks. We haven't decided what it is yet. We may go classic. We may do something more recent. And if there's anything you'd like us to see us review, feel free to leave suggestions in the comments, and we'll certainly consider them if it's something that we both have. Actually, you know what? There is a story I think we kind of landed on. We're not going to tell you what it is yet. But if we see something in the comments we like better, we could replace it. So feel free to do that. Totally cool. And if not, we'll think about that for later. And that's how we're going to keep doing Bad Chat. We'll do a lot of episodes, and then we'll go back and do some comic stories. Steve and I just haven't had time to do both. And folks were missing some of the comic reviews, and frankly, we were too. So we're glad that we're glad that we got a chance to do this. And Steve, it's somewhat sentimental and nostalgic for me because this is how you and I got started working together, is reviewing reviewing Batman comics. And
yeah, we did Hush is the first thing, if memory serves.
I think it's the first thing we ever did, and boy, I learn a lot from you every time we do this, and it's always enlightening and humbling because you know so much more about Batman than me, and I always learn a lot. So,
oh well, thanks, man. I love being on the channel with every one of these comic reviews. It's always so much fun.
Thanks, buddy. We'll see you guys later. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Steve.